So where exactly are you from? Where'd you grow up? You always been living in California or what?
Well, I grew up in Burbank, California. So all the way through high school, I moved there when I was real little. I don't remember moving there. We moved there from Louisiana. I was probably like 2 or 3, and then when I graduated from high school, I went to Ole Miss. So I
Okay.
moved to Mississippi and didn't really fit in there as like an LA kid moving out to the sticks of Mississippi. I made some good friends there that I still keep in touch with now, but for the most part, if you're not from the South and you end up at an SEC school, you're not really going to fit in very well. So,
Right.
uh,
And I heard Ole Miss is actually super like beyond popular belief. It's not like a large university, correct?
no, yeah, it's when I was there, it was years ago. It was at 2001, but I want to say the town itself, the town of Oxford, Mississippi, was like maybe 50,000 people, and like 30,000 of them were students. So the town is tiny. The school really, like, relatively isn't all that big. Um, it was a lot of fun. If I wasn't in class, it was fun. But yeah, just the people there were nice to your face. And I'm not trying to badmouth anybody. I'm sure they're nice people, but there's a certain, I guess maybe you would say, prejudice towards city people. I'm just didn't really make lasting friendships other than a few guys that were in the fraternity I was in, and then my brother was there, so I hung out with my brother a lot. But I had been offered a scholarship to Azusa Pacific before I went to Ole Miss,
For what?
so music,
Music.
so
Oh,
for singing. So I
gotcha.
yeah, I decided to go do that.
That's great. That's awesome. I understand I understand the prejudice. I can relate to it in the aspect of right now I do a sales job, right, where I'm calling C-level employees, C-level executives. And a lot of times, especially when I'm calling the South, it's very, very difficult because if you don't talk like them or in the way that they talk, they're very like, you come in there with that, I guess they call it a northerner accent, right? And like I'm from
Yeah, yeah,
Michigan, so like northern, very like proper um tone. They're just so not about hearing what you have to say, like at all. It already automatically dismiss you.
yeah. I'm sure. Have you ever been called a Yankee?
I haven't been called a Yankee yet.
No, because that was a common thing. Was like, are you a Yank? I mean, I guess I'm from LA. I don't know if I would consider that being a Yankee, but
It's
like
so
my whole family's from down there. My mom was born and raised in Mississippi. My dad's from Arkansas, so I figured, oh well, my family's from there. I'll fit right in. But
it's
because I didn't have
so
that southern draw,
right. That's so crazy to me too because like how long ago did that happen? You know what I mean? Like the whole war, the Civil War happened so long ago, and like that's the identifying factor they choose to like hold on to, and generalized,
yeah,
right? So like not everybody in the South. I know a lot of people in the South that are super nice people, but sometimes it's just like they they hold on to that. Yeah, you a Yankee.
yeah. I think a lot of it was just immaturity because we're all young at that time. We're 18, 19. They're holding on to that, true Southerner, like proud of being from the South, which is fine. That's cool. You can be proud of being from the South, but there were certain groups of people that just didn't want to include anybody that if you weren't from not even the South necessarily, but a specific section of the South, like Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, some Tennessee, because it's close to Tennessee. Like, you had to be from that specific section to really like fit in with the, I guess I would say, like, the really popular guys.
I think I feel like there should be like food identifiers for the South instead of like, like can you cook crawfish? Then you're from the South,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know too many people in
I
the
would have
North.
fit in. I'd be good if that was the case, but
I get what you're saying though. It's weird that society groups itself in ways that you can only become, and we don't do it like some countries do, where there's a literal sects
yeah,
of where you're from, but like we do it in a subconscious standpoint. Like for example, like you said, right? If you didn't have the accent, if you didn't walk the country walk, you weren't a part of it. And like
Yeah.
I always think that amazes me that that's still a thing.
Yeah. The big thing back then was Ducks Unlimited. Do you remember that company?
No, I was probably too young to remember
Yeah,
that
probably.
company.
It was like this big. Everybody had Ducks Unlimited stickers on their trucks and wore Ducks Unlimited hats. It was like before the Bass Pro Shop. You know,
Became a
everybody wears
thing, yeah.
Bass Pro Shop stuff. Then it was Ducks Unlimited, and all the bills on their hats were all frayed. And man, I was an LA kid who at the time was listening to like Incubus and like rock music, and
Right.
these I come down there, and the funny thing to me, I was shocked so many of them listened to rap music. I was like, well, I was a little surprised, but
Yeah,
you know,
I you would think country would rule, right? Like that, like, but I guess I don't know. Not everyone's trying to honky tonk at a frat party, right?
yeah, for sure. Uh, I mean, they listened to country for sure, but yeah, I was always surprised. I'd jump in somebody's car and they'd be blasting Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg, and I'm like, what the heck is going on
Like they're from LA.
here? Yeah, exactly.
Well, so would you went to did you I'm assuming you went to school for music, right? Or did you get a different degree?
No, I actually never finished, but I went to school for music. Um, I was at Azusa Pacific, and I was a vocal performance major, and I was having fun. Everybody was cool, but I guess 2 years in, as a vocal performance major, I realized that everybody I knew at the school that was majoring in vocal performance would graduate and then come back and work at the school. And I was like, that's not at all what I want to do. I don't know why all these people are doing it, but I'm not doing it. So I started looking at other schools to go to, and I found a school. My dad at that point had moved to Texas, and there was a school probably 3 hours away, 2.5 hours away from my dad that had, oh, they claimed a world class musical theater department, and that was what I was really interested in at the time, was getting into theater production and doing that kind of thing. So I transferred there, and the first semester I was there, they got rid of the musical theater department. So I kind of got hosed on that deal, but
World
I
class.
yeah. So I just stuck with a vocal performance major, and I was there for about a year, and my sister unexpectedly passed away. So um she was an actress in LA and was having kind of decent success, starting out. She was young, but I realized after she passed away, I did like one more semester, and I was like, man, I don't need a degree to go do musical theater. Like
Well,
nobody who
yeah.
I know has a degree. So I
And I guess that'd be my one question is, a lot of people I know that do musical theater or music degrees and any some standard always feared or had the innate fear of like what am I going to do with this degree, right?
yeah,
Like what can you do with it, right? You're not going to go into I guess a practical job according to societal standards and be
yeah,
like, here's my music degree, let me work on Excel.
yeah.
Like so that fear, did you ever feel that fear going into it, or were you just kind of like, this is what I want to do, so I'm gonna go for it?
Yeah, I guess I never really feared anything. I guess I knew quite a few people at the time that had degrees in, communications or journalism, and they weren't working in those fields. So I was like, well, what difference does it make if I have a degree in music and I end up in the corporate world as like a fallback? Then, I still have a degree. That was my thought process at the time. But yeah, it's funny. I've never been asked that question, and I guess I never really thought about it. I just did what I thought I wanted to do, and it didn't. You know, in the short term, didn't work out because I prioritize things a little differently than my friends that are now successful on Broadway and touring the country or doing all that kind of stuff. But um, I did what I thought was right for me at the time, and I think looking back, like I wouldn't give up what I have right now. So I think I did things the right way. So
I think You hit it on nail on the head there, and I think it's a great thing that a lot of people keep themselves from doing, and that's you put it in the simplest to rephrase you, did what I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
I think that keeps so many people back today because a lot of people are scared. I'm even, I live in San Francisco, right? So most expensive place to live. The background's from San Francisco. I just realized that. But one of the most expensive places to live, and I would be lying if I said it doesn't scare me to want to do what I want to do. But you know, trying to overcome that, I think is super important. So I guess like you said you didn't think about it, but I'm assuming at some point later in your life, you definitely had to make decisions where, doing what you wanted to do might not be the easiest or best solution, but you still either did it or you didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, so when I left school in Texas, um, I had got accepted into a workshop over the summer in New York for uh, professional musical theater. And, going into it, I thought it was kind of a joke. Like, I had to audition over tape because I couldn't get to New York to go audition. So I had to sing a couple of songs and do a monologue and all that stuff. So I was like, man, there's going to be, when they accepted me, I was like, man, there's going to be like 500 people in this thing. And we're all paying, how I think it was like $1,200. And this is going to be a joke. So I go to New York. I was dating my wife at the time. And I go to New York, and the first day I walk into this classroom and there's 12 chairs set out. And each chair has an envelope with it and it has our names on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, there's not that many people here. That's kind of cool. So I sit down and I open the envelope, and it's got like a breakdown of all the classes we'll be taking and when they are and stuff like that. And people start to trickle in. I think I was 23 at the time, something like that, 23, 24. And I'm noticing as all these people are coming, I'm like, man, I'm the youngest one here. So I'm watching. They're like in their 30s, some in their 40s, a few in their late 20s. And then I was sat on the far end. They start, the instructor comes in, and the instructor is like a musical director for two shows on Broadway. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's legit. And they start introducing everybody from the other end. So as they're introducing themselves, they're like, "Oh, I'm so and so. I was in the national tour of Phantom of the Opera." And the next guy, "I was in the national tour of Jersey Boys." Like all the way down, everybody's done professional like tours or been on Broadway, and I'm like, "What the hell?" Like I've literally done regional theater at best, and that's it. So they get to me, I introduce myself, and then we all get up and sing a song individually. And the whole thing was like a month long. We stayed in the dorms at the Manhattan School of Music, and I made really good friends there. The
What was your
instructors,
go-to song at the time?
oof, uh, I think it was "Music of the Night" from Phantom of the Opera. I think
Okay.
it was either that or uh, a song called "Wick" from the musical The Secret Garden. Either one of
Okay.
the two, and things went really well actually. At the end of the workshop, they sat everybody down individually with all the instructors. So it's just me, the musical director for Jersey Boys, the casting director for like 5 different shows on Broadway, and a former Broadway actor who is now a vocal coach. And all three of them were like, "You need to live in New York right now." And I was like, I can't move to New York. I'm like still in school. Like I'm dating a girl who lives in L.A. And they basically, the casting director, he said, I can count on one hand the amount of straight men in New York who can sing, dance, and act. And I can count them on one hand if I include you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that means I'll get work. So I, unbeknownst to my wife at the time, decided to move to New York. And she was not happy with me when I told her. But I it took a while for me to start auditioning because my vocal coach was like, "You're not ready yet. You're not quite ready yet. We'll work with you for a while, and then when you're ready to audition, I'll send you out there." And you know, it took probably 6 months or so before she kind of let me off the leash and go audition. But
So when you left, and obviously your wife was upset, so she didn't come with you? I'm assuming, right? Or
yeah, not initially. So
okay,
she actually at the time was designing women's purses and handbags, and she also worked for a watch company out here and was doing pretty well with the company. So I didn't expect her to just leave all that. You know, she wasn't in the same place I was where it was, I don't need a degree and I can just kind of on a whim move across the country because I don't have anything tying me anywhere. Because we were already long distance. So that was my thought process was I'm going to school in Texas. She lives out here. What difference does it make if I'm in Texas or New York? Like it's still long distance.
right.
And yeah, she was not happy, but I'd say about 2 months after I moved, she came to visit. And while she was there, I asked her to move in with me. And she had a lot of stipulations, which were good. She laid some boundaries for I'm only moving if this, this, and this happens. And one of them was she had to find a job. Well, I already knew I could get her a job where I was working because I knew everybody and they needed people. So I was like, well, I got that taken care of. I can get you a job. And then her other one of her other stipulations was finding um, shops to get her purses in. So while she was there visiting, she was there for like 10 days. While she was there, while I was at work, I told her, go try to get your purses in shops while I'm at work. And I think it took like 2 days and she got her purses into like three shops. And so it worked out. She ended up moving out there with me a few months later.
And how long did you stay in New York for?
Well, I was there for 2 years and then got hired to do a job in Pasadena, of all things. Moved from LA to New York, and then my first professional job was in Pasadena.
Would you
So
what were you doing?
it was a musical called Paradise Lost, and actually, it's kind of a funny story. When I was at Azusa Pacific, the composer of the show um, was an artist in residence at Azusa Pacific, and we premiered the show in Berlin, like as a choir, and I ran into his partner on the street in New York, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "Hey, we're doing Paradise Lost again." Now this was 5 years later, I want to say,
Okay.
and I was like, "Oh, I thought it was kind of over and done with." And he's like, "No, it's been totally rewritten. Everything's new. It's more like a Broadway show now instead of an opera. It's going to be awesome. You should audition for it." And I was like, "Well, I live in New York now. That's going on in Pasadena." And he's like, "Oh, I'll send them an email and they'll set something up." So I got an email like 2 days later with a time to audition. So I auditioned and they hired me, and I was like, I guess I'm going back to LA for 6 months to do this show. So it was a good experience. Though it was great. Like everybody in the show was very professional, and getting to do a show 6 nights a week for 6 months was awesome.
What so you came back, and then did you go back? I'm assuming you went back to New York once the show was done. For the lady. Oh, and so how long, I guess, how long were you doing these roles or these one-off roles where you go and you're gonna do, like the show in Pasadena and come back, and maybe find another show to do, and you're just bouncing show hopping, I guess. I'm gonna call it show hopping. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's what it's
yeah.
called, but show hopping.
Yeah, no, that
Uh,
makes sense.
um,
Yeah, I was probably doing it for a little over 3 years, probably. Um, I just reached a point after I got back from doing the show in Pasadena where, I mean, we were barely making rent. I was working two jobs. I was auditioning probably 4 or 5 times a week. And I got a call back at every audition I went to, but it just got to a point where I really wanted to have a family someday. And I'm looking at all my friends that are older that, maybe in their 40s or late 30s that were doing it, and they were still single and didn't have kids. And I was like, man, I don't think I can do this for that long. And I enjoyed it while I was doing it, but I, I wasn't willing to give up the opportunity to have a family to pursue that.
So when did you decide? When was the deciding factor to hang up the mic in a sense, for singing, or I guess close the curtain? I like close the curtain better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, on that whole venture and really take, I guess, a job with more stability seriously.
Um, I guess I was about 27 or 28, and I just I knew I wanted to marry my wife, and I knew that her parents are very old school. So I was, planning on asking for their, um, I don't want to say permission, but for their blessing, basically, to ask her to marry me. And I knew that if I was off auditioning and not getting jobs and stuff like that, that they would be more hesitant. So I decided to move back to LA and get a job that was a 9 to 5. That it wasn't the best paying job, but I knew it was stable. I knew I could work there for as long as I wanted to. It would be enough for us to, at least start establishing a life together. And, it was a good stepping stone for me at the time. But yeah, I knew I wouldn't be able to start a family and marry my wife if I just kept, uh, I guess, wildly auditioning for whatever I could.
Show hopping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what was the job of choice then? I guess like coming out of something like that, what really was open for you? You know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? Because you, degrees not there. Um and even if it was a musical degree and you're coming off of doing shows. So I guess what was the what was the job of choice at that moment that brought you stability?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. So when I was doing the show in Pasadena, it didn't pay very well at all. And we had to keep our apartment in New York. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anywhere to go back to. So I contacted my best friend since I was a kid. I was like, hey, do you guys have any like temporary spots I can fill just while I'm out here doing this show? So he asked his boss, and they did. And it was a post production house for IMAX movies, like large format movies.
Okay.
So they did distribution, quality control, shipping, all that kind of stuff. So I just started out as a boxing movies up basically. And while I was doing the show, um, the owner of the company and I talked a lot. And when I left to go back to New York, he told me, if you ever come back, you've got a spot here if you want it. So I knew it was there if I wanted it. And I think that was probably some reassurance for me of like, I've got somewhere to go. I've got a job I can go to. It paid decently enough that we could afford to get an apartment together and things like that. So
Crazy job because I feel like it might not be as needed in today's
oh,
life.
when I before I left that job, I told the owner quite a few times, like, "Hey, we got to go digital, man. You got to start going digital." And he's like, "No, no, there's always going to be film." Like they're still going. I know they're still going. I still talk to the boss, but um, they're starting to go digital. I'm like, man, you could have been ahead of that. Get some 4K projectors and could have been saving some money.
Could have been
But
you.
yeah,
So, you're going through all this. When do the kids come in?
we had our first daughter when I was still at that post production company. So she was born in 2010, and we were living in an apartment in La Crescenta when she was born. So not too far from where I grew up. Um, we had a little tiny 1 bedroom, 800 square foot apartment. And actually, when our daughter was born, was when I realized I was going to have to leave that job to find a better job because I didn't have benefits, I didn't have health insurance, and it was just starting to get like, and daycare was costing as much as my wife was making at the time. So it was pointless to have her go back to work when we're spending her entire paycheck on childcare. So
Right.
I started reevaluating what I wanted to do then, and ended up um, applying for a job as a police officer. And so I left that job to become a police officer.
The Big 12. The a police officer. So what kind of cop were you? And when I say that I don't mean crooked or whatever. Um I guess did you state sheriff? Were you doing a lot of highway patrolling? Were you doing a lot of um active violence? Like I guess I don't know much about the cop world in a sense to know exactly, other than I get pulled over for tickets, so like that's my extent of the knowledge of the police world or what I see on Law and Order Special Victims Unit. So like I don't I don't know too much about the assignments and kind of what roles that every cop plays.
So I can't say what agency I work for because in a public capacity I have to get their permission. But it's a large law enforcement agency, uh, and I work the custody division. So you can go two routes. You can go patrol, which is like a normal street beat cop, or you can go custody, which is just in the jail working security for jails. So I decided to go the custody route because it's more stable time wise for my family. And I don't want to say it's necessarily that much safer, but it's a more controlled environment. And I like to think I'm a pretty decent dude. And a lot of times when people get in trouble, like when police officers get in trouble in a custody environment, it's because they're being jerks. So you lay yourself out there and you're disrespectful to somebody, that's when you're going to come into problems. So I just, man, everybody makes mistakes. I look at everybody I come across at work as no different than me. They just made a mistake and they're in a bad spot. So you're here to fix it. And as long as I'm there, I'll do what I can to make sure you're doing okay. And if you need help, I'll help you. And I just try to be a good dude. I don't want them to be intimidated or worried or whatever.
Right, and I always found it interesting that uh, people in general are so quick to dismiss everyone and create assumption about someone, right? And whether it's inmates or people going to jail who are like, you're just another cop, and I hate all cops.
Yeah, yeah,
Or it's, a cop with the mentality of, you're just another washed up deadbeat and you're all deadbeats. And like I always find it like it amazes me how quick we are to assign inhumanities to humanity, if that makes sense, right? So like we're so quick to dismiss certain circumstances without realizing that like hey that like that's a person, right? So like if I was going to jail and you're the cop, like at the end of the day, like you're there to do your job. You're
yeah,
there to like you're not there because you're the direct reason why I'm in jail. You're there to do your job. And I think the same goes for like you said, right? Like I'm a person, I made a mistake at that point in time. That this is all hypothetical, by the way. I'd never been in jail.
yeah,
Made a mistake at that point in time. uh and it is what it is, right? Like you don't need to know the mistake. You don't need to know that like I'm still a person at the end of the day. And I guess I would like to see more of that. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, as you saw all the things that happened in 2020, right? I think it's one of the biggest problems in society today is we're so quick to dismiss humanity.
yeah. No, I agree 100%. I'm There's a lot of that going on like every side of the spectrum of just that you get labeled as something, and now you're stuck, whatever that stereotype is, you're stuck to it. And I've been a victim of that plenty of times, from people I grew up with that find out I'm a police officer and they just go off the rails on me. And I'm like, man, you've known me since I was a kid. Like, you should know better than anybody that I'm not out there hurting people and doing things I shouldn't be doing and committing crimes and stuff. I don't like, you would think somebody who knows me really well would know that, but people get very easily influenced by what they see in the media, and they
Well, it's
just
almost
latch
like
onto it.
people are starting to choose sides. Like there's like it's you know um I guess, oh, you did shows. So, like, the one oldest shows ever, like Romeo and Juliet, right? Like, people just chose sides, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know, this family versus that family. Like, that's what it's turning into. I think it's just so amazing because, yeah, like, I know people that became cops that aren't bad people, and they did it because, honestly, much like you, they needed a better, more stable job, right? And, like, that's not, if you look at being a cop, it's not an easy job
yeah,
and not a lot of people want to do it. So like it's an opportunity for a lot of people. And so, you know, and I know unfortunately I know people that have been to jail too. And they were doing what they thought was right to get money or to do whatever. I guess in my case I knew them because they were trying to get more money, but just non-legal ways.
yeah,
Um and you know, it's everyone has their reasoning for things. This isn't 1492 where, you know, like you're
yeah,
born into this family and like that's all you get to choose and like it doesn't matter what who the person is. And so I think that's crazy that you have friends, you know, you grew up with that are so quick to dismiss based on, you know, things that are happening, world events, right? Like um kind of like how there was a problem when 9/11 happened, right? And everyone started dismissing a whole culture.
yeah,
And like
yeah,
it's you know, it goes back to like the inhumanities.
yeah, for sure. And I and it's not just, even right now, it's not just aimed at cops right now. It's like everybody's going through it in some way or another. If you don't want to get the vaccine, you're going through it. If you do get the vaccine, you're going through it. If you're an Asian American right now, you're going through it. If you're a cop, you're going through it. If you're a BLM supporter, you're going through it. It's just everywhere.
Even if you wear a mask or don't wear a mask,
Yeah,
someone's got something to say. I had a friend who just told me they went to like Texas or something. One of those more southern states that is like fuck it, no mask. Like, you know, like, and she said people down there were so like were like mean to her because she decided to wear a mask. We're like, that thing looks disgusting. And like we're like just genuinely mean people. I just thought it was so amazing. Like it's so it amazes me that people are willing to judge something that does not affect them. Like her wearing the mask like affects your life in no way, shape, or form.
yeah, that's crazy. It doesn't
So
make a difference if she's wearing a mask or not.
right, right. So when did you decide to, you know, you're still a cop. So when did you decide that like, I want to pick music back up? I want to get back, you know, kind of and I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, as we've been talking and getting your story, life's not a direct path and we can try to steer it any way we want, but it doesn't always get us there.
Yeah,
And it's there's never life's never a straight line. And so, you know, you took your detour in a sense, right? I'm gonna call it in a sense because you're still doing it.
yeah.
And when were you like, you know, I want to get in the boat, I want to steer it, I want to get back on the horse in a sense of what I used to be doing. You know, what made me feel young, the young stallion, where's that guy at? And so like you know, what made that decision? What went off in your head? Was it one night you were just like click or what?
Um, it's funny to like look at it from that perspective, because I probably only took maybe 3 or 4 years off from doing anything musically. I just put my guitar away. I listen to music obviously, but I didn't actively do anything music wise. And then I want to say about 4 years ago, my older brother, is in a band, and they decided that they wanted to play Eye of the Tiger, and they none of them could sing it. So my brother came to me and said, "Hey, can you come sing Eye of the Tiger for us? We've got a show in like 2 weeks and we really want to play that song." So I came to their practice and I sang it, and everything went fine. I did it at the show, and a couple of weeks later they had another show coming up, and my brother was like, "Hey, you want to sing this Kings of Leon song too?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I came to practice and I sang that Kings of Leon song, and the drummer was like, "Hey, so you're our new lead singer, right? Like, we're just gonna go you full time now." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," because it's my brother's band. He sings
Right.
in it, he plays guitar. And my brother goes, "Yeah, well, you play guitar too, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just join the band? And when you're not singing, you just play the guitar, and then we'll start mixing you in on other songs, and you'll just be the new member of the band." And I was like, "All right, that'll be cool. It'll be fun." So I did that for, I mean, I technically we still do that. We just haven't been able to because of, COVID. But I would say probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, basically right before COVID, I decided, hey, I'm going to start playing on my own. I'm going to start trying to write music on my own and do everything I can to just put myself out there.
You're
And
breaking the band up, man. What are
no,
you
no, we're
doing?
still
I'm just
together. We're still together.
kidding.
uh, but that band is all for fun. There's no even remote aspirations for doing anything other than being a cover band and playing at bars and that kind of thing. So I just decided I wanted to be more serious about it than they were, and that's not a knock on them. They're all really good dudes. They're good musicians, but they have good careers that they're like set in, and they don't want to do anything else. Like I think I could probably convince my brother if it came down to it and things were going really well, he'd probably jump on the bandwagon. But um, yeah, I think that was probably the beginning of it was playing with them, and then I don't remember when it was, but we had a show or a practice or something, and something just clicked, and I was like, man, I kind of want to take it more seriously than this. And so I talked to my wife about it, and she was like, why don't you just do it then? Do it on your own. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I just started playing on my own, starting to venture out without the band, just me, and had actually had a show lined up in December right before we went on lockdown again. But um, hopefully, when things start to open back up again, I'll have some shows planned. And
Hopefully soon. If
yeah,
everything goes as planned, hopefully soon.
yeah, yeah. What are they saying? Like June
Yeah,
15th?
well, Biden would love 4th of July to be normal, like everything just nothing happened.
Yeah,
And I would love for 4th of July to be normal, like nothing happened. But I think, my opinion, realistically, I think August, September, you'll see things become more normal,
yeah,
in the sense. But yeah, so soon you're almost to the finish line.
yeah.
What w- you know when writing, I guess, what are you writing first? Let's start with that. What is your music? What's your style? What are you doing? Are you Motley Crueing it, or are you like
Not. It's hard. It's kind of hard to even kind of categorize because I have so many influences that I just write, and whatever comes out comes out. I'm not really concerned about, is this country or is it folk or is it rock, or I just write. And then if it happens to sound like a country song, well then okay, I guess that's a country song. And if I write something else and it sounds like a rock song, well, I guess that's a rock song. I don't really want to shoehorn myself into a certain category because I've been listening to so many different types of music since I was a little kid that I have more influences than I can even tell you. So I may write a song that I, you know, finish and listen to and go, "Oh man, that sounds like a, you know, Eric Clapton song." And then I may finish something else and be like, "Oh, that sounds like an Incubus song." So it's just kind of all over the place really. And I didn't really start writing on my own until quarantine hit, really. So it's hard to find balance because work is busy with all this, and there's a lot of overtime because we have people out sick and things like that. So it's been tough to find a balance to find time to write. But when I do, I just kind of spew it out. And if I like it, cool. If I don't, I just throw it away and start over.
Do you think you write songs in one sitting, or do you think it's a lot of like, "Oh, this sounds like it could be good. Let me write that down," and then you piece it together, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's weird. I think it just depends on the song because there are definitely times where, like, out of nowhere, I'll get lyrics and a melody and everything all at once. And I'll have to like frantically type it in my phone and then sing it into my voice notes. And that way I can remember it. And then I get home and then I'll write guitar and it's cool. And then other times it's like, oh, I got this like two lines like I like the way they sound and I'll write them down. Like I have a couple on my phone from like just yesterday that it's only like, 16 words. I'm like, man, that sounds cool though. I like that. So I'll hold on to that. And then when I sit down to write, I'll pull it out and see if I can come up with more behind it. But there's way more fragments of songs in my notes than full songs, that's for sure. So I think sometimes they come in pieces, sometimes they come in a full song. Um, Sometimes it comes as a guitar part first, sometimes it comes as words first. I haven't, as of yet, I haven't had a melody with no words yet. Usually, if I get a melody, there's words with it, but it's all kind of it's a crapshoot, really.
See what happens. Might throw some sticky notes on the wall and throw darts
Oh,
at
for
it.
sure.
See what
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what
yeah.
falls. Do you think? I know a lot of people that you have kids and did this or that or doing this or that. Do you think are your kids musically inclined, or do you think what you do has heavy influence on what they perceive to enjoy?
I think so. Um, they enjoy when I play the guitar and sit on the couch and play the guitar and sing. That they'll usually sing with me, or they'll ask for a certain song or whatever. Um, they both dance, which is good. Um, I was never really a dancer, so I don't have any input as far as that goes. But my wife was an incredible dancer, so she certainly had an influence on that, which is good. Um, but they both love to sing. They're always singing in the car, and when they're running around the house, they're always singing. So I think maybe there's some influence there as far as most kids may not enjoy music quite as much as they do. Um, but I also surround them with it all the time, so they're hearing music constantly.
So sorry, I want to get back to where I guess where I was going. When do you think uh and that's great that they both pick up after you yeah, I mean, I guess you would find that, right? Like they're around you guys the most. They're not at the stage where they hate you yet. So
Yeah.
like most kids turn out to it's so crazy. I know like, being in high school I wouldn't say I hated my parents, but like, you just want to be free, and now that like I'm free, it's like, "Hey, how you guys doing? Like talk to me." Like
Yeah. 100%.
um but what when do you, I guess, if you were able to foresee on your path that you're going on, where would you like to land?
Yeah. I think, like, aspiration wise, I don't have any real aspirations of being the next like Luke Combs or anything like that. I think I would really enjoy being. I don't know if you know who the Avett brothers are. Do you know who they are?
I do not.
Um, they're uh, they're like Americana folk uh, brothers. They have like a string band with them, like a bass player and violinist. But they're making a comfortable living, but can also go out in public and not be bombarded and you know interrupted every time they go to dinner. And I think ultimately, like, that's really the goal, is to just have a really solid fan base that I can go tour all across the country, like medium sized venues, and make enough money to support my family and live a, you know, decent life. I don't need to have Ferraris and Lamborghinis. I just want to have a house and, pay my bills.
Right. And I think I don't know, 'cause I don't perform. I'm not musically inclined, and when I try to sing, I sound like a dying duck. But, um, I would like to think that having those mid-sized venues almost might be some of the best performances, and why I say that is because those people that are packed in that room or packed, those 500 people, whatever that you wanna consider a medium-sized venue, a few thousand,
Yeah, no,
those
that's
are
good.
die-hard fans, right? Those are fans that, what it wasn't like, "Oh, this concert's coming. Everyone in, the wherever, everyone in New York's gonna be there. Everyone in LA is trying to get tickets to the show. Tickets are 400, $500." These are, like, the people that are like, "Yo, I've been waiting for this guy to come here, and I'm super excited that I get to," like, those are the people that would go to a concert by themselves, I feel like,
Yeah.
just to enjoy the music, right? And I feel like I would feel like on stage, I would just vibe with that so much more.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. Like that's part of why those are my goals is cuz I want those kind of fans that are like I'm going, I don't care if it's a 4-hour drive. I'm going to go catch him cuz he's only coming that close. And all the artists that like I kind of I don't want to say idolize, but like the artists that I really enjoy right now, the artists that I'm really into are all that way. Like one of the guys I listen to is a farmer full time. So he only tours in the winter months so that he can farm his land in the summer. And man, his music is awesome. It's very unconventional, but it's also really intriguing to listen to, and it's full of emotion and like that. I'm a storyteller, really, is what it comes down to. Like I like the intimacy of small venues, and uh, one of the things that my dad taught me, he was an actor, um, when I was in school for theater, was that when I sing a song, it's not really that important how you sound. Like it is to a certain degree, but the more important aspect of it is the story you're telling. And that isn't necessarily the words sometimes, because if I'm doing a cover song or if it's a song from a show, those words are already predetermined. I can't change them. But it's getting the emotion across during that song of what that character feels. So now that I'm doing things on my own and I'm writing on my own, now I'm able to determine what those words are and tell that story. And it's a lot easier for me to connect with what that story is when I'm singing it because they're my words. So uh, I just think music has a lot of power in it, has a lot of influence in how somebody feels. And um, I've been through a lot of pain in my life. And I think, I know for me, when I was going through it, I felt alone. And the whole point for me is to try to, I mean, this is sort of why I became a police officer too, was I just don't want people to feel like they're alone when they're going through something that's really traumatic and painful. And now I think I've just realized that I probably have a better chance of reaching more people through my music than I do as a police officer because everything's very one on one and individualized. And like as long as I'm a police officer, I'm going to keep trying to do that. But I think if I can tell my story through my music, then I think more people will get some satisfaction out of it. And, uh, you know, they'll know that I've been through what they're going through and I came out of it okay and you will too,
I
you know.
think I think that's great, and I think the artist storytelling in music is becoming lost. And I think one industry that it's becoming lost in is the industry I listen to a lot. I listen to a lot of hip hop, and it really is just becoming more of like a what words can you make sound better together.
Yeah.
situation instead of telling a story. And I started listening to various other more, mid-sized bands like you would want to get to. St. Paul and the Broken Bones is one of them. Check
Yeah.
them out if you've never heard of them.
Oh, I've heard them. Yeah, they're good.
Oh, you have? Yeah, they're
Yeah, yeah,
super cool.
yeah.
Broken Bones and Pocket Change is my song, and why I love music like that, as you were saying, is, I've been through, for what I would think at 23 is a fair amount of pain, probably more than most. Um, and there are times, right, where you feel alone, and like, what do you do, right? And like, especially, I live out here by myself in San Francisco. Well, I have a roommate, but essentially, I hang out with the same 2, 3 people every week, uh, and a lot of the days I'm alone, right? We both work, we do our separate things, and so I guess I would almost like music gives you almost that hug and, like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
sense that, like, you're listening to these stories and you're listening to, you know, Broken Bones and Pocket Change, and you're just like you can feel it as if a song for me, someone who has difficulty showing emotion, it draws it out. It allows that release, and that it is that, again, it's that hug, right? When someone gives you a hug, especially in a trial time in your life, it it allows you to let go.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about storytelling music and those special underground artists that you don't um that not everyone knows because they're just for you, and they're just, they're just there for you, and to give you that hug and to give you that, you found relation in them, and that's what makes them great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's I guess I never really thought about it in those terms, but that's exactly what I was trying to describe. Is like you get that like you, I have a hard time showing emotion. So when my sister died, I was only 21 and she died unexpectedly and we got zero answers as to what happened and we still don't know. And that was really hard for me for a long time. I mean, it's still hard at times, but uh, at the time it was incredibly hard. And there were like so many different bands and artists that I would listen to that would like start to draw that emotion out enough for me to maybe talk to my now wife about it or my good buddies or whoever I was hanging out with to maybe just open up enough to um, let enough out that like I felt a little better. And since then I've gotten way better at talking about my feelings so that it doesn't get too bottled up and you know, but I think that's probably ultimately what has like led me down the path of like wanting to write my own music and tell my story and have people hear my side of things. Like my sister's story was all over the news. It was on 48 hours. It was I mean it's been on a bunch of different TV shows and specials and we just never really got any answers. So the whole thing was pretty rough and ultimately I think ended up killing my dad because he died a few years after she did. And yeah, I mean, I know there's tons of people out in the world that have lost siblings and lost parents, and uh, but I felt completely alone at the time. And the only time I didn't feel alone is when I listened to certain music, and I was like, oh no, they get it. They've been there. They know what I'm going through. So like you said, I just don't think there's not that much of that going on right now, and I just want to be one of those voices of reassurance for people that you may feel alone, but you're not alone.
100%. People need that. People need someone like that because I think what really happens in reality, like you said, what happened to you is unfortunate, and I greatest condolences towards you.
Yeah.
Um, but other people have lost siblings and parents, and I think what the problem is not I guess I shouldn't say problem, it's not a problem, but I think what happens is a lot of people are like, "But they were m you didn't lose my sister, or you didn't
Yeah,
lose my father." And no one knows when emotions cut that deep, I don't think anyone knows how to truly describe what they're feeling in a very direct way.
yeah,
And I think that's why music is such a great outlet for people in that sense, because it's like I may not be able to say what I'm feeling right now, and I may not be able to, you know, even enact on what I'm feeling, but there's been times where I send a friend, they're like, "What's going on with you?" I'm like, "Just listen to this song. Like, listen to this. Like, this is what I feel. This is
yeah,
like you listen to what this guy's saying. That's what I feel." And I think that's that's what makes it so that is what makes music so beautiful. It is like happy, sad, like whatever you're doing. Like you can be like, "That's what I feel." Like they, like you said, they get it. They
yeah,
understand what I went through or what I'm going through, in some version of the matter.
yeah, for sure. And like you said, there's always that divide of like, well, I know maybe you lost a sibling, but like you guys weren't as close as we were, or it wasn't your sister, or it wasn't your brother, or whatever it may be. You always, I think, mentally we always find the difference so that we can hold on to the like, no, 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 this was special because it was my situation. But like, I think ultimately, really, it's we all go through very similar circumstances at some point or another. Um, Losing a sibling, I don't know, maybe not, but I know a lot of people have, a lot of people, and uh, maybe not as young as I was, and maybe it wasn't under the same kind of circumstances, but it doesn't diminish the amount of pain that that person went through. And when I write, I try to write it in a way that uh, I don't want to personalize it too much. I don't want it to be too direct about what I went through. So I try to sort of keep it vague because the only thing I really want to come across is the emotion. I don't want, you know, I did just yesterday write lyrics to a song about the month of October because that's when she passed away. So that's probably a little specific, but I want to try to keep it vague so that people don't um, kind of shut off and go, oh no, my situation's totally different than that.
How important do you think the melody and the sound is to invicting that emotion as well?
Oh, I think a big time. Maybe as important as the words are, because you know, uh, I think a good example is probably the that song "Pumped Up Kicks" because that
Yeah,
song is about something horrible, but nobody knows. They just all the other kids and everybody's dancing to it and having fun. That song's about a school shooter.
yeah.
That's terrible. But I think it's basically the exact opposite of what we're talking about. So if you don't properly convey the story you want to tell in the melody and the sounds of the song, then people will completely miss the emotion that you're trying to convey. Now, Pumped Up Kicks may have intentionally done that. That was probably an intentional choice to make.
Right.
But yeah, I think melody and chord progressions and whether you use diminished chords or minor chords or inverted chords, that those all make a huge difference in what kind of emotion gets pulled out of a song.
Well, in instrument too, and because I know there's times where like I hear songs like knocking all right, so like knocking on heaven's door, right? Great, phenomenal song, invokes a lot of emotion. And I remember one time I heard it by not Guns N' Roses, by someone else singing it on a piano, and it was just a piano. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, like it really tugged at you at that point, right? And it's just like, just because there's something about, for example, the piano and that instrument that invokes that special kind of deep rudeness, I guess I would say, or broodingness, or whatever the word is. I know it's
Yeah.
there. I'm close at least. You know what I mean, though. It's the as I guess as the chords are struck, right, the subtle fadeaway that a piano gives,
Yeah.
it's just one of the it's almost unmatched in my opinion, especially when you're trying to go for something sad. I would almost say 9 out of 10 times when something that's super sad is played on the piano versus played on like a let's say played on the drums, is it's always invicт. It always will accomplish more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the piano definitely has probably, other than like a maybe like a cello or a violin, you can probably convey the most emotion out of a piano. Um, I will say that stringed instruments like the cello or the violin, you can draw some huge emotion out of those. But there's not too many people out there playing the cello singing. So, but yeah, I agree. I think the piano definitely creates a lot more emotion just based on how long the chord holds out, what chord you're playing. If you're hitting, with one hand you're hitting a certain note and the other one you're kind of clashing against it, creates that tension. So yeah, I agree.
So where or when um is your music where and when is your music more of your music, or if you haven't been putting it out there, I guess, um where can you find it for
Well,
people that are listening?
I have an Instagram. It's Bucky Barnett Music. I have a TikTok. It's also Bucky Barnett Music. Um, really lately, I haven't posted that much. I think I'm gonna try to work on, now that I've got like a semi home studio set up. I'm gonna work on getting some stuff out to put on like iTunes and Spotify and stuff.
There's some great apps out there that I think help with that, or
Oh yeah.
websites, much like what I use for podcasting.
Do you use Anchor?
I use Anchor
Oh,
for
okay.
podcasting. Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that stuff. But yeah, I'm just trying to write as much as I can. I want to try to get at least like 5 or 6 songs put together before I put anything out. Um, I know I've found some new artists and they've got like one song, and I'm like, man, I want to hear more.
Right.
So I just want to kind of get enough to where people can cycle through it and listen to different stuff. But I have a bunch of covers and things like that on my social media. And when the lockdown first started, every Thursday night for 17 weeks, I did an hour-long live stream concert. So that was cool. I'd just play requests. People would request something. I'd give it a shot, and it either bombed or it went okay. But yeah, it was cool. We had thousands of views on it. It was cool.
Nice. That's super fun. I definitely would see myself participating doing that on like a Wednesday or Thursday night. I got nothing else to do. Just sit there and wait to hear your song. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it was cool.
All right. Are you ready for this?
Uh-oh, yeah.
Uh,
Nice. Got a little reverb going there.
it's time for the craziest thing that you've ever done that won't get you fired.
Oh god. Shoot, I mean, really, I've probably already told the story, but just on a whim moving to New York City was probably the craziest thing I've ever done. I mean, that was out of left field. Nobody knew I was going to do it. Had no family, no friends, just out of
Most
nowhere.
expensive city and one of the most expensive cities in the world, most
Yeah,
expensive
yeah.
city in the country.
Yeah. It was, you know, like I said, looking back on it, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I made all those choices because it brought me to where I am today. But those years were pretty rough. They were
I could
hard.
imagine a lot
Yeah.
of they got ramen noodles at those times, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
I
yo, a
lived on
lot of
them.
ramen.
I lived on. I ate so many of them, my ankles swelled up. Too much sodium.
That's insane. They're so good though. They're like
Yeah.
they're so hard to stay away from.
Oh, I know.
Oh, and so I know you went over this a little bit about your music, but once again, where can people find you? Give it all, Facebook, Twitter, anything.
Yeah, all I have is Instagram at Bucky Barnett Music and TikTok at Bucky Barnett Music. Actually, I have a YouTube too, and it's Bucky Barnett Music. So um, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I interact with everybody who says anything. I always comment back. So yeah, it'd be cool if somebody come check it out.
Mm, definitely. Well, Bucky, I appreciate you coming on the cast, and I think it was great, and I really can't wait to jam out to some of your music. And I'm gonna be try to be there next live show you got and have you play some songs.
Yeah, right on, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.